So for watching Harry and Meghan's documentary, episode 1 and 2 last night, I wanted to start off my reactions by saying that I am kind of surprised and also not so surprised to see so far that a lot of the stuff online about Meghan seems to be false. I never looked too much into their relationship, but I was kind of keeping up with some of the stuff that was online, in particular because I'm interested in psychology, in particular some of the body language, uh, so-called experts or whatever. Uh, there was one particular guy who was making a lot of videos about Meghan and about um, Jada Smith as well, and talking about narcissism and signs of narcissism, and particularly like disturbing behaviors, showing these clips and stuff, and it really looked very convincing. I'm a very intuitive person. I'm also very suspicious and skeptical. I do read in between the lines when it comes to um, things like this, and for me, it just seems like gossip, unless I see something for myself. So even though the videos were very entertaining and they seemed like these people know what they're talking about, and there's a lot. I mean, I don't really pay attention to comments and what random people say, but if there's like a good quality, well presented video from somebody who is a professional psychologist or a body language analyst, then I will watch that and take it into account. However, I just couldn't say that from what I'd seen of Meghan Markle myself that she was like narcissistic, and I'm someone who has a lot of experience with narcissism in my personal life, from my parents to adult relationships, and suffering with emotional instability. I tend to attract other women with emotional issues and personality disorders, in the past at least, and even now. I mean, um, so I have had a lot of experience with narcissistic personality types, and I would say that I recognize them very well based on having to figure out, having had to figure out my own like dilemmas. And watching episode 1 and 2, I just can't see that Meghan shows any symptoms of narcissistic personality disorder. Of course, in the same way that those videos were edited to make her really look like she's got some issues, these this documentary is also edited by them in their favor, so it makes them look perfect. They have this perfect relationship. They were really, um, they're like in love. They have the perfect love story. They, the way they came together was really magical. And met on, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, you probably shouldn't watch this because I'm gonna go through all the details. But the fact that they met on Instagram, and also like they fought. All the friends are like giving these reviews that they fought. Yeah, they would go to the ends of the earth to be together, and they had to fight all this stuff, which I absolutely believe what they're saying from their own mouths a lot more than I believe anything anybody else is saying about them. And of course, like right at the beginning, Megan mentions that two people have written a story, like written, two people have written, or people have written books about us who don't know us, and Harry says, we know the truth, nobody else knows the truth, we know the truth about ourselves. And of course I was a lot more likely to want to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And I don't believe that it's all perfect, and the glamour around, how perfect they are together and the relationship being perfect. I mean, maybe they do have a really good chemistry, really good relationship. At the same time, um, there's obviously going to be moments where they're not so perfect, and it's not shown there because it looks too good. It's too fantastic. It's too um, beautiful and romantic and all that. So I am waiting to see obviously more, um, and see how I feel by the end of it, or what I think by the end of it. But it's not so much what Meghan is saying about herself or what Harry is saying even about her. Um, it's really me just looking at Meghan, how she interacts with the camera, her body language, for myself, and how she treats Harry. Like, narcissists are not that good at lying and hiding that in a documentary. You can't see. You, like, if they're celebrities, they're singers, they're actors, yes, of course, they go on stage, they perform, they do a movie, they do a show, you're not really gonna know. um and especially if you're not familiar with narcissists, people are around all the time. People who don't know what narcissists are just wouldn't recognize, unless something extreme is going on. And there are times where someone can just be extremely charming and really sort of elusive, and so you really wouldn't know what their issues are, because they're more self-aware that their issues are antisocial and they wouldn't show them. So maybe they would only show their narcissism and their selfishness in a relationship, but in their social circles with their friends, with colleagues at the office, maybe they're not so manipulative, or they'll be very generous and they'll be very likable and popular. And so narcissism, whether it's covert or it's like um, noble narcissists, or whatever it is, uh, I don't think that I could watch a lot, like a documentary, and not see in their eyes and things like that, because the same way that these body analysts online are, body language analysts are looking at their behavior clip by clip and saying, look where their eyes are going now. This person looks uncomfortable when the intention's not on them. That's the kind of thing that they would say about Meghan. And I would say that in this documentary, there's a lot more footage of them and their personal lives than there is in those interviews. And of course, in an interview with the media, when someone's uncomfortable, you don't really, it's very hard to say why they are. But I could definitely, when I was watching those videos, I was feeling like there's multiple reasons why Meghan could be uncomfortable in this situation, and it might not just be because she's not the center of attention. So I personally didn't 100% buy it. I could still be wrong. At the end of this documentary, I could completely go back and confirm that these body language analysts and maybe not psychologists, but particularly your body language analysts that I was watching, and other people that are completely demonizing Meghan, are like right and she's evil and all that, because I just don't know what's going to happen in this documentary. But so far, this is what I see. What I see is that she's a decent human being. She looks like a good partner, and that Harry is happy with her, and a good mother who's caring. And so far, of course, they paint all the perfect, like, highlight all the perfect points of her life, but there's also some evidence to back it up. So when they say that she's charitable, and you see a clip of her giving this speech when she was a young girl, and straight A student and all that, which doesn't really matter to me, but like they paint this picture, I guess, because it's relevant. So it's definitely relevant to the biggest, like, kind of heartbreaking issue to actually hear, even just in the second episode, about the racism. So when you see that she was a straight A student, she was like a do-gooder, she was kind of nerdy, and yeah, good friend, good daughter, and everything, and then they started saying that she's straight out of Compton, which I was like, I couldn't even believe that they made this association. Like, it's so racist, and there's no other way to just like explain that, why they would make that reference. That they're basically just saying she's black or half black, therefore she is ghetto, and like, why Prince Harry, like, essentially insinuating, that why would Prince Harry marry this ghetto ass bitch, like she's, but just because she's half black, just because she's part black. I mean, what is this reference? And like, I didn't know any of this was going on. I don't pay attention to the news for the reasons that I also consider it sort of like professional gossip, and they never give you the full story. But of course, because I don't want to be manipulated by the news, I do end up missing some key factors. But it's a sacrifice I make, because at some point I'll get to see it. Like now, I like, if it's important, I'll hear it. It'll come to me, through the Vine. But the fact that there was like people in the clip, I didn't know there was so much racism against Meghan. I mean, just upfront racism, and the fact that there were all these like using immigration protests to uh, target the scenario in the royal family, and basically talking about not wanting to integrate maybe a half black person into the royal family. And I didn't realize there was all this, because what I instinctively felt is that actually it's such a good thing, and that people are gonna love it. And I completely didn't think about all the racist British people that were gonna not love it, and because I don't think about those people. To me, those people are kind of really irrelevant. But when you see like that they're protesting and all this stuff, it just seems like so loud and over the top and unnecessary. And then it's like, well, what the hell? What are they doing, and why? And the fact that like I knew that a lot of people had a problem with anyone saying that all lives matter, in a way that they're trying to undermine the Black Lives Matter um, representation by saying, well, all lives matter. The fact that I knew that that was a problem for a lot of people, and I kind of understood that maybe Black Lives Matter was not the best phrasing. Maybe Black Lives Matter too would have been a better phrasing, and that I can see why some people would feel like, well, yeah, Black Lives Matter as a part of all lives matter. I don't really feel like everybody who was saying all lives matter was trying to like undermine Black Lives Matter at all. I think that it was just like a clash of, I think, like the phrasing wasn't, maybe the term was a little bit restrictive or something. But when I saw that there was a guy in this clip wearing a t-shirt saying British Lives Matter, I was shocked, because this really is another level of like unquestionable stupidity and ignorance. I actually could not comprehend what this person was trying to say or prove with this t-shirt. I've never heard anyone saying anything like that. I've never heard anyone saying like white lives matter. I've never heard anyone saying like, yeah, it was just I mean, that's definitely ignorance. I mean, there's nothing more that I can say about that person in particular, this one random character that really made a big mental note for me on how stupid really a lot of the racist uh, Caucasian British whites can be. I really didn't know there was any sort of like protest. But then a lot of those people, I live in London in UK, and a lot of those people uh, don't live in London. I think probably 99.9% of them. I'd be very surprised if any of those people are from London protesting against, because I mean, I don't think they would stay in London if they were that racist. Although there are racist people, there are racist white people in London that do kind of, they get drunk, and I mean maybe there are a lot actually. Definitely around when there are like football matches, so soccer matches, there's the World Cup, and you see like soccer football fans, like the hooligans, that they call them, like football hooligans. So all of these like white men filled with testosterone on cocaine on the London underground, and Londoners only will know what I'm talking about here, and probably some tourists, but they kind of just like move in their crowds, and when they're together like this, they really and like on drugs, and alcohol and excited, they do show some of their like lesser, maybe more discreet cultural traits, in that there is like a collective racism between them. They love their BMP, and they wouldn't usually say it, but when they're drunk and they're together and they're like raging, then they will show these racist sides. So actually, like outside of this, I wouldn't say that there's too many experiences outside of when all these white guys who are like football fans, which is the national sport for them, and they're in a white country, like when they're all together and they're like, yeah, you then I feel scared, as even just like a slightly tanned olive skin person that is clearly not white with curly black hair. I do feel scared. When I'm like on London Underground, I'm not sure if I'm like there's gonna be some sort of rampage or something. But outside of that, like the only time I would say that I see like clear racism is like occasionally when a white guy who's classically one of those guys, like a pub guy, like a beer guy, like a um, bald guy, um, there's just like a particular stereotype as well to them. And uh, of course, I'm not saying like all of them. I'm saying it's quite rare that I see it in London, but I do question why they stay in London. Like, so they'll be drunk. There was recently like a drunk guy, classic um, stereotype, on the train, and kind of I made he was ranting to himself, and he wasn't completely crazy, but he was quite drunk, and maybe a little bit crazy. And I looked at him a couple of times because he was complaining about something political, and I had a feeling he might be one of those people. And I we made eye contact once or twice, and then like we looked away, and then as he got off the train, he started shouting like fucking blacks, fucking packies, like whatever. And that's essentially anyone who's brown and black in England. That's what they know. So they basically don't want black and brown people in the country, is what he was saying, and that is something that I would see sometimes, especially in my part of London, because I do live in multicultural areas. There are like small towns around, like inside London, that are very, very white, um, as well, but they're very rare to see. Um, and even the ones that are white dominated, because there's so much commuting inside London zones where there's so much diversity, people just naturally open up. Culture changes, like maybe the older generation might be racist, but they won't say it. They learn to adapt to the culture in that, okay, this is my view, but everyone out there is very mixed and everyone is like accepting everybody, and I'm not gonna say my view. And I think that some of them are stubborn. A lot of people did leave London. A lot of white people did leave London, and those people I'm gonna say like something about, but I think that some of them didn't leave because they were stubborn and felt like, I don't like that London has so much multiculturalism, but I'm not gonna leave because I was here first. And at the same time, so even though they're racist, they don't like having to share their space with people from other countries. They also are stubborn in that they're not gonna change their location because it was their home first. So that's why there are racist people in London, even though London is such a much multicultural place. The other people who left London and the people who live outside London, so the rest of England, outside of two other major cities that I can think of, and some of the Midlands, but like places that where black people and in general immigrants from Asia, brown people and integrated non-white people. There are a few places, so Birmingham, Manchester, Midlands, like Nottingham, and everywhere else is obviously white. We're in a white country, and a lot of those people up north of the country um, are totally racist, but I wouldn't ever really go there, so I wouldn't have a lot of experience to talk about. Like, I would actually be afraid of going there. I definitely would be uncomfortable. Anytime I leave London and I go somewhere that's dominantly white, and outside of London, even inside of London where I've been to dominantly white places, if they're, especially if they're not like middle class, affluent areas where I feel like people might be more civilized, more educated, more calm, if they're like places where there are groups of young white boys walking around together, like, and I know that they are, uh, uh, if I can see that they're aggressive, or, yeah, I will be very worried. So, this is like me trying to explain England, what I know of it, and the fact that like because I live in London, I'm in a bubble where I'm very comfortable most of the time. Like, and even if I see racism, I don't really take it that seriously because it's not a full-time thing. And I know that outside London that exists, but it still catches us by shock because we don't really experience it here. So I know that there are some very, very, very racist people outside of London in England. England is a racist country. I like it opens um, its arms to immigrants, but um, but the social aspect, majority of the country is still predominantly white, and I think that just like anywhere else that is predominantly white, there's gonna be racism. I mean, I definitely would say that oddly, people that I've met from other European countries such as Italy and Spain seem a lot more relaxed. And actually, I think they have less multiculturalism than we do here, just based on the population of London alone. And that might be a contrasting thing, but like, I would expect there to be maybe more racism from someone who comes from Spain or Italy. And the thing is that there is racism, but they're just a lot more chilled. So they might have their views based on ignorance, based on lack of experience, but I don't think they're like out protesting, um, you know. But who am I to speak about this? I don't have that much experience. I have also heard that racism in Milan is, worse than it would be here in London, and it's a big city, but like I knew a mixed race, biracial, same like Meghan Markle, half black, half white, girl that I worked with who was working in Milan. She grew up in Italy, and she was saying that's one of the reasons she came to London because she was experiencing racism from some customers, who were saying she's black and I don't want her touching my hair. She was working as a hairdresser. So she had this experience once, and for instance, even though that once was shocking to her other colleagues and that customer was kicked out, the fact that somebody existed in that city that could even thought that was appropriate, like that was acceptable to say, that's not something that I could imagine would happen in London, because that one mixed race black girl would have been a rarity, I think, a novelty there, more than it is here in London. So again, I, living in London, am shocked, and I'm also not shocked because I know that I I'm reminded every time I see these kinds of scenes that this kind of thing happens outside of London and England, and I can't speak so much about other countries, but I know that it exists in other countries, in some ways worse, in some ways better, is what I'm trying to say. And it's just very shocking. It's kind of traumatizing to find out that people are still like this because it puts all of us at risk, and not just like really even people who are non-white, although I imagine more so for us, but um, it just makes us realize like how ignorant the world is. And I think that whether you're a white person or not, you're still at risk. Even as a white person, I think when you find out that majority of the world is still so ignorant, um not the majority of the world, um but a lot of people out there are still very ignorant, um even as when it comes to race, they might be ignorant, but ignorant people are generally ignorant in general. So they might be racist against non-white people, and you might not feel triggered by that as much as a white person. You might, but you might not feel triggered on a personal level that, oh, I would feel that makes me feel unsafe, um knowing that these people exist. But at the same time, you are aware that there are these like nasty cool people out there. So I'm sure that like for instance, if you were to like have non-white friends, if you were to side with non-white people, if you were to defend them, then maybe those people would turn against you. I think that nobody is like safe when there are ignorant, violent, aggressive people out there who are like anti-humanity in some way. Because being racist in any sort of way, being homophobic in any sort of way, being anti anything that people are, um, um, is like being anti-humanity, you know, not supporting other human beings in an empathetic way, allowing them to be themselves, allowing them to live, to exist, and to have the same rights that you do. For instance, in the case of Meghan Markle, to have a relationship with somebody that she loves, who is a human being, and it doesn't matter what his blood is, you know, and that's the kind of thing that I don't understand, that people, why people don't get over. um, you know, all I can see is two people who love each other. They're both very down to earth, and if they're willing to overcome all these illusions of status and all of that, you know, why should everybody else on the outside be there to tell them how they should live and who they should be with, who they shouldn't be with? It's not even like people within their own family. Like, it's bad enough that within their family they maintain these traditions that they have to get permission from the queen before they get married. But like, people who are just non important people in the country, that, I mean, people should humble themselves, because I mean, in the documentary it said it's hard to be British and not consider the royal family an extended part of your family. Like, I think it's ridiculous. We don't understand. You know, like, any normal person that I know around me every day doesn't understand why people like queue up to see the queen and cry and do all this stuff, like, really not just with the royal family, but this whole like public figure celebrity culture, where anyone, you know, like, they do the same thing with celebrities, they do the same thing with um, maybe politicians, I don't know, but like this whole fan culture, this is what it is really, when they're lining up and queuing up to see members of the royal family who don't know them, you know. Like, I only really comprehend people being emotional towards people that they have a personal bond with, their own friends, their own family. Not knowing somebody, knowing them only as a public figure, like, it's not a personal relationship, and people get so emotional about it, so I don't understand any of that. um but of course, then, if that is encouraged and it you know, that culture, fan culture, is encouraged, then of course, then people don't see it as dangerous and chaotic as I do, that these people are also like, they feel they have the right to be involved in the decisions of the personal lives of those people, because they're encouraged to love these people, to connect with them even though they don't know them, but like, you know, line up just to like touch their hand and say hello and see them in person and wave, you know, see them wave while they go past, and all this stuff. So of course they then feel like they are like affected by those people's decisions. So it's kind of like a two-way street. You can't have people admire you as a monarchy and then not want people to be affected by your decisions on a personal level once they're emotionally involved with you and you've encouraged that. Um, because if they didn't care about your personal life and you as a person and weren't gonna cry when you die, um, then they wouldn't be so involved in your relationship. And I'm not blaming Harry and Meghan for that. That's a cultural issue, but that is something that I don't think Harry's ever really wanted, and he's just kind of tolerated because that is his family. So for the sake of it being his family, he's tolerated that, and it's his family as a monarchy that maintains that for their survival, which is understandable. You know, that is what they are. It's not who they are, but that is what they are. And for as long as that kind of thing exists in our society, this is going to be a problem. Celebrity culture, you know, status. Um, and on the beginning of the documentary, they say that like the royal family is like the, you know, one of the highest ranking, like, important people or something like this, you know, in the world or something. And it's like, to me, they're not. They're humans just like everybody else. Their life has no more or less value than anybody else. And that's the way that I see the world. Um, and I don't see how it would benefit me to be in this illusion with other people. It doesn't benefit anybody to make some lives more valuable than others, unless it's based on the level of contribution they make to the world. And like, in some terms, when we're talking about the level of contribution, okay, I understand, but not really. I think that um, when we're discussing the economy, fair enough, but countries have run without monarchies for how long now? I don't really think we need a monarchy. I don't think we need kings and queens. We do need leadership, but it's another subject um, to discuss really how well that's working out for us in terms of the leaders we happen to like have in office and why. So, do we need a monarchy? Are their lives valuable because they contribute more to society than others? I don't think that they do. I think they contribute in their unique way, and that they do have a difficult life, and that's what they choose to sacrifice to maintain their position and their traditions and their status and their importance. So, um, you know, it's habits, really. I think that people in those positions, if they had a taste of what it was like without that kind of pressure in their lives, they would probably choose to sacrifice it. Just like everybody on the other side, as they mentioned in the documentary, is like willing to sacrifice it. Like there were multiple women who Harry dated, he was mentioning, who couldn't handle the paparazzi and the fact that their lives are torn apart, and decided not to date him anymore, which means they're willing to give up being part of the monarchy because they already had a taste of what freedom was like. But of course, if you're born into that family and you have so much to lose, when you don't have it to lose, then you're not scared of losing it. You're not scared of, you don't care about not having it because you see actually more objectively, more clearly, like what this is taking away from you. But if you're born into the monarchy and that's all you have, then to lose that, you feel like, what would I be without this? And having something to lose is more difficult than not having it in the first place, which is, I think, why a lot of people struggle to even to get into positions where they're going to have something to lose. And if you're born into it, people think that you're lucky to be born having a lot, money uh, or assets, but actually it's more pressure to maintain it than to have less responsibility and be free. So there's always like a good and bad to everything. And so I think that Meghan sticking with Harry and really being willing to go through all of that shows a lot about how much she loves him and how much she is dedicated, devoted to her relationship with him, that it was worth it. And literally her friends asked her, is it worth it? And she said, well, it was, obviously, because she stuck with him and she has two children with him. And I have heard rumors that they've separated now. And, I don't know if they're true. My partner doesn't know if they're true. And usually I go to her to double check because she watches the news every day, but I think she watches more about war and stuff. So I don't know, she just doesn't know. And this is really my only source at the moment is my partner. So I don't want to look it up because it's so hard to sift through the junk nowadays online to get to the truth that I'd rather just watch a documentary straight from the source. I don't know how long ago it was made, so maybe it's not even, maybe they have separated and it's not going to say, but once I watch the documentary, then I can actually um, look up other truths afterwards if it doesn't show. But I'm sure that by the end of the documentary, I'll see where it's going. So far, I think this is all the feedback that I have about episode 1 and 2. I wanted to make my videos before anybody else, like I watch anybody else's, because I don't want to be influenced by their reactions, but I am going to go and watch other people's now because I want to see what other people are picking up and what they think. So main key points for me that so far Meghan does not seem narcissistic. I can't believe they actually were saying stuff like in the beginning they showed that people were saying like she's like the antichrist and yeah, she's a bitch, she's this and that, and like so far she seems like a perfectly nice individual who is like a sweet girl with a good life that she didn't have to give up for Harry and she did. And for me it seems like their love is genuine. I could be completely wrong, and I can't wait to see what happens in the upcoming episodes. So, I look forward to to more reactions. And thanks for watching.